Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this lovely Thursday afternoon. And it's my last day of school, so now this will be my last time in the podcast room that I'll be using, so RIP that. But to start out this day, we're going to talk about Jokic winning the MVP in the first segment. And then in the second segment is going to be all about the Knicks game and sort of the outcomes and like what I think about the Knicks game. And then in the third segment, we are going to be doing a quick playoff preview of all the games that are going to be going down later tonight. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link that's displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead into the first segment. But before I do that, we have a very special guest with me today. I would like all of you guys to say hello to Eric. Eric, say hi.
Hey guys, how you doing?
All right, so Eric is the host of the wrestling podcast that starts at, you know what, why don't you go ahead and tell them your bio, since you're the one that runs the show.
All right, so I'm Eric Rodriguez. I'm the host of the GSMC Wrestling Lawyer Podcast, where we talk about all things wrestling, WWE, to Ring of Honor, to TNA Impact, and recently we talk about like a lot of headlines, especially within the NWA, the North Wrestling Alliance. So yeah, just all things wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, absolutely come join my show. This is a great show. Love watching Nelson doing basketball podcasts. Absolutely dope.
Oh, and he's actually like a genius. Like, he's really good at his podcast. There was this one point where he auto-recorded the messages himself and interviewed himself, and I'm just like, genius. No, like that's what you do when you're in wrestling. Like, you just
definitely
you come up with something on the fly. But let's talk about basketball, because that's really what these people want to hear about. So, what do you think of Jokic winning the MVP? So, like, me personally, I always, like, and just so you know, like, my camera's up there, and that's why I'm not looking at you directly. So I'll look at you directly, and for the viewers, that's why I'm looking down, because my monitor's down here, just so you guys know. And for the guys on the audio section, it really doesn't matter, because you're just listening to our voices. So, so I mean, personally, I thought that MVP was very well deserved. If it was anybody other than Jokic winning that MVP, then I feel like these voters would have most definitely suffered from recency bias. I mean, Shai is a great player. I'm not saying that he's not a great player, but in terms of value towards a team, I don't think that Shai just provides that much value compared to what the value that Jokic provides, because Shai, like, I mean, he still has a very, like, it's a young team, but it's still a pretty good team. And I understand that he's the one that's sort of doing all of the scoring and all of the heavy lifting on the offensive side of the ball. But so is Jokic. And Jokic at the same time is making his other teammates better just with his passing alone, and like his playmaking and how elite he is on the offensive side of the ball, as well as like causing deflections and being a presence in the paint. Like, a lot of people don't really give Jokic credit for some of the defense that he plays, but that's just my thought process on the MVP. Like, I mean, I just think that Jokic and like his numbers, and the fact that he's constantly been winning, it's just too much just to, like, not give him the MVP.
I agree, 110%. I honestly think he should be 4 times running MVP. Last year, Joel Embiid won it. Embiid's one of those other players that will probably, with him off the roster, the 76ers don't really have a chance. But I'm happy that Jokic won this award. I think he's more than deserving. I think in the contemporary play of NBA, I think we were talking basketball yesterday about the spacing, how you need to be agile, you need to have great endurance, stamina. So for a big man like Jokic to kind of prosper in a league like this, I think that's very impressive. And it's all deserving, definitely.
And with this MVP, Jokic now owns the most MVPs by any international player ever. So he has 3 of them. Giannis has 2, Tim Duncan has 2, and Steve Nash has 2. And those are the other like international players that have as many MVPs. So what
Well
do you think
deserved.
about that?
Well deserved. I think a lot of great names up there. Like you said, I'm a Spurs fan. Love Tim Duncan. A lot of these big men, especially in contemporary game of NBA, like it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to keep up with these guys. Like I think I kind of have a theory. Obviously this is my opinion, but I think that's kind of the reason why maybe Joel Embiid and maybe Anthony Davis keep getting injured. It's because they're relatively big guys, and for them to kind of push their bodies to do these things that like SGA can do or that Brunson or Hart or whatever. I feel like that's probably why they strain themselves, their muscles, and just they try to like be better. I don't know. Like, the center spot in the NBA has changed. The game has changed. You kind of have to be an well-rounded player. You kind of have to shoot threes. Back in when I was watching NBA, these guys, hey, stand in the paint, throw you the ball. You bump into your guy and you score the easy layup. But
average
nowadays you see
average 80 center.
yeah, exactly. Now you see Embiid out there chucking threes and Carl Anthony
I mean,
Towns, and you're
you
like,
said you're a
dude, like
Spurs
just
fan. Look at Victor Wembanyama. Tween.
yeah,
Like,
yep, exactly. Wemby, he's gonna do great things for us. Like how tall he is and just how dominant. I'm looking forward to the future, definitely. And I think I saw something that where Wembenyama, Luka Doncic, and who's the other guy? Giannis Antetokounmpo both like kind of agree that because Serbia, that's where Jokic is from. I think they said European basketball's more like physical than the
yes,
NBA.
yes, no, no, that is actually very accurate. The rules in your European basketball are very different than the rules in the NBA, and what they allow in FIBA and the Olympics is also different than what they allow in the NBA. They allow a lot of defenders to actually like make contact with some of the players,
Yeah,
and they also like they don't see flopping, and like
right.
they don't give like other players any kind of leeway, if that makes sense, because that's sort of what it feels like. And to answer your question on why a lot of these big men keep getting injured, a majority, well, for Embiid's case specifically, Embiid spends most of the time landing on the ground. So
That's
it makes
true.
complete sense that he eventually gets injured because it's like he goes up and then immediately on the ground. And I'm not trying to be like dramatic or disrespectful towards Joel Embiid in any way, but that's literally what he does. Like every
Yeah,
time
no,
he
it's
goes up.
true. The audience, we watch it, we see it, and I think you were bringing up flopping and stuff like that, and how like someone could just brace someone or just look at them the wrong way, and they're like, "Whoa!" Like all of a sudden they fall back and they try to get the foul and stuff like that. And I don't know, I kind of miss the way the NBA was a little more physical, but you see all these points being put up, you see a lot of fast breaks, a lot of dunks. It's good ratings, so I can imagine why the NBA has kind of tweaked things a little bit for better ratings and for more
You could
audience.
also like flip it and say that all these 3-point shots just make it boring, especially when they go on
Yeah,
stretches
no,
where they miss.
exactly, exactly. I think we were in a production meeting once, and I think you brought this up how Paul Pierce said that Steph Curry changed the game, so he's like one of the best NBA players.
Hmm.
And it's kind of true. Like when Steph Curry, when he was in his run with Golden State, and they were just dominant. They were just 3-point shooters. You had Steph, Clay, and I think back in the day, like Draymond Green even hit a couple of threes, and then they picked up Durant, and then it just made the game like. I think that's maybe kind of pushed me away. That's kind of when I took a break from the NBA because I was like, okay, these guys are just going to be shooting the whole time. I kind of miss the physicality of it and the people chirping in each other's ear and stuff. But this is the game that we love.
Right. And I mean, and a lot of, I mean, there are some players that do chip at their ear. I mean, Anthony Edwards, he's a prime example of one of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, Shy, he does that with his game. Like I will say, like he talks the talk with his game, and he is also like rather enthusiastic, especially in his Instagram posts. Like if you he makes some ridiculous captions, and he posts like all sorts of like clips of him cooking a specific defender, and like that's
Yeah.
sort of his way of taunting. And speaking of Shy, he is the first player since 1967 to average 30 points per game on the number one seed in the Western Conference and not win the MVP.
Wow, that's crazy. That's bananas.
Yeah, and a lot of people are sort of saying that Shai was robbed of this award, or that Luka was robbed of this award because Luka's numbers towards the end of the year, he was after All-Star break, he was averaging 38 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists, something like that. Like those were his numbers, and they were absolutely ridiculous. And they say they're saying that Jokic was robbed of, well, not that Jokic was robbed. Jokic robbed them of winning that award.
Yeah, all very, very impressive stats. The MVP award, like you mentioned before, kind of is one of those things where I maybe the past the NBA championship maybe could have, been like a blurred line that maybe subconsciously persuaded these voters to be like, well, he won the championship last year, so they can't do it without Jokic. But I don't know. I just like this guy. I like this guy from Serbia. He was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial. I heard that, and I was like, really? So then I did some research, and I was like, dude, that's crazy.
Yes, he
Like,
did. He was drafted in a Taco Bell commercial, and now he's probably the best Denver Nugget ever.
yeah, exactly. Be like, oh, cool. Here comes this badass guy from Serbia. Oh, the quesarito crunch wrap is coming back to Taco Bell. Like, that's cool. Like, it's
That's
just cool
just
how it
be
all
that was
kind
that
of
was
unfolded.
incredibly cruel.
Yeah, that was crazy.
That was
That
cruel.
was
But
crazy.
how
But
do
these
you
guys,
feel? How do you feel about MVP being like reserved for best player on best team? Like, what are your thoughts about that? Because that's essentially what the MVP is. Like most of the MVPs that win it, they're very high in the seedings, and their teams have a lot of wins.
yes, exactly. They're the star players, quote unquote star players. They're definitely a lot more marketable on their teams. Like just kind of running through the lines, we have Steph Curry, LeBron James. I think even James Harden won it in the recent like decade. And these
Yeah, he
guys
has.
are, yeah, these guys are shooters and stuff like that, man. And just it's kind of hard not to put them in the MVP category solely because
I mean, to be fair,
that
LeBron's kind of a
becomes.
dunker.
Yeah, that's true. That's true as well. But honestly, they get people to buy tickets, they get people to buy merchandise, they put the butts in the seats. So I think maybe that's the reason why mostly star players are. But there's a lot of role players that deserve. Like I said before, I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, and growing up, you had the big three. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, but Manu Ginobili was a six man. He would come off from the bench and just absolutely like torch so the star players could take a break and sit down on the bench for a little bit, and then Manu Ginobili would run the offense, and he was
So,
good.
are you just like trying to say that like maybe there's other players that are like just as valuable than like the best player on the best team? Is that like what you're getting at?
Exactly,
Ah,
exactly.
okay. Because I was wondering like where you were getting at. I was like, because usually whenever I ask this question, they usually say something like, yes, it shouldn't be a team. It should not be like team records shouldn't affect it because like the most valuable player is going to be the player that can put up the best numbers in their
That's
thought
true. Yeah.
process. But I
No,
do
I
understand what you were
think so.
talking about, how Ginobili was coming off of the bench, and he's one of like Argentina's best players ever for their international team, and he
Yeah.
was he was coming off of the bench for the NBA, but it was whatever the team needed to win. Like that was his game, and that was the Spurs game, all about winning,
Yeah.
and
Exactly. And
his
yeah,
value was sort
honestly,
of a little bit undermined throughout, like
I think
because
so. Yeah.
I don't really hear that many people talking about Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili, especially when they're talking about like top point guards that the NBA has seen. Now that I think about it, Tony Parker has a Finals MVP.
Yeah. No, he was Tony Parker from France. He's definitely was a star player. A lot of those Spurs players kind of kept it
Those Spurs players,
like.
like they quietly changed the game. Like
Yes. Yes.
Manu
Exactly.
Ginobili, he invented the Euro step, and Tony Parker, he revolutionized the floater. Like
Yeah. Oh my God.
those
Yeah.
like
No, that's
and
exactly
it's
true.
it's the fact that these guys like they don't get talked about. It goes exactly back to your point saying how it's all about flashiness, and how Tim Duncan and like Ginobili and all of these guys, they are not flashy. And honestly, that might be why a lot of people are disliking Jokic for winning this award, because he's not flashy. And Shai and Luka, they're both very flashy.
Yeah, no, that honestly, you hit the nail on the head right there. And Jokic isn't your like average ordinary NBA star posting on Instagram all the time, dunking on people, like making
And
posters and
even then,
stuff
I
like
still think
that.
his moves are like so clean. Like, how could you hate on that?
They are. Like he has the ability to kind of like he's kind of this bigger guy and he doesn't have like, he's not like the best physique, but he's big. He's very big. He can facilitate. He's a passer. He can, make moves in the paint and stuff like that to get to the basket and he can shoot threes. Like this guy's the all
Right.
around probably one of the best that the NBA has seen in terms of big man who can do it all.
Right. But with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the fun segment where we both talk about the Knicks game against the Pacers. We both like New York teams. We both like the New York Knicks, and we both hope that they succeed in the postseason. So I will be right back with you guys after this short break. Well, actually, my bad. We will be right back with you after this short break. I'm used to saying I. Oops. But we'll be back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we're back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Knicks and the Pacers game last night because I watched the game and I'm pretty sure Eric watched the game as well. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized or to use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right into the second segment where we talk about the Knicks. So, did you watch the game, Eric? I know I did.
I did. Yeah, it was very entertaining. It was, kept you on the edge of your seat. Kind of giving it a short. Well, no, I don't know. It was my critique was that I right now you see the Knicks kind of going through like injuries and stuff like that. But honestly, I think that they still have what it takes to beat the Pacers because the Pacers had a chance once when Brunson was out and they led at halftime by 10. And
Right.
I know they
I'm
didn't
just
really
sorry to cut
take.
you off right there, but for the viewers, Brunson did go out in the second quarter. He did not play a majority of the second quarter at all. And later down the road, OG Anunoby also got hurt in the game. So that's like two really, really big players that the Knicks needed. Two of the best players that they needed now. And Jalen Brunson, he returned after the second quarter. So I mean, no idea how he's gonna do that, how he's gonna go, or like how things are gonna happen and how they're going to play out in the playoff series. But continue with that. I just wanted to.
And yeah, it was. I think definitely the Indiana Pacers, sorry, should have definitely capitalized more on that. You saw Tyrese Halliburton. He had 34 points. I guess he only scored 2 points in the third quarter. So kind of like when it was time for crunch time, like we saw him in the last game, he kind of froze up a little bit.
But he did play a
Um,
lot better overall than he did in the previous game. So I will give him props for that, especially like being the leading scorer for the team and shooting highly efficiently. But it's just in the moment when they really needed him, he just wasn't there for him. And I just don't understand what it is.
exactly.
Oh, Kenneth is in the chat. Go Knicks.
Oh wow, my boy
Yeah.
the OG.
Yep, the OG. If you guys don't know who Kenneth is, he's the host for the GSMC Football Podcast, and we both recommend you go watch it. And like, we might not be football season right now, but there's still a lot of football news going on. Like, we know it.
Oh
It's
yeah,
football,
exactly.
right? So this game, it wasn't as close as the previous game, but like it was much, and it was a lot more competitive, but it was just scarier because of the injuries that were going on and like all of this extra things that like you don't expect. But DiVincenzo delivered yet again. Jalen Brunson also delivered yet again. Unfortunately, his streak of scoring consecutive 40-point games, it's over. So he's tied with MJ now, and he can't go any higher, which is unfortunate for him, I guess. I mean, being tied with MJ, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. Being in any conversation with Michael Jordan in it, like it's still cool. It's still cool, definitely. And one of the biggest stories, and I feel like this kind of separated the Knicks from the Pacers, was their offensive boards. I didn't see Indiana really
Yes.
they're
They
like
do
when you
that
were
all
talking
the
about.
time. They've been doing that the entirety
Yeah,
of the postseason, and like it's really it's almost been like a staple of their offense at this point. And
right. Exactly.
Kenneth
Yeah,
is in the chat saying, "I am the OG, but the Knicks might have lost OG for at least this series."
wow, he's the best. That's a good headline. Like like
Mm.
you put that on there, like
That
that's
is a pretty good headline. Somebody quote
yeah.
that. But
And it's
regardless, like that was really really bad, and especially like how OG is a very important defender for this Knicks team, and without that defense, that's literally the biggest difference maker between the Knicks and the Pacers. It's their defense. Like the Knicks defense is what keeps them in these games,
yeah, no, I
and
saw
also
that.
their hustle and Josh Hart getting all these ridiculous rebounds like it's nobody's business.
I know because like we were talking about before, how recent NBA teams use the spacing, so a lot of the times they try to get back in transition, totally giving up the chance at a second chance points for the offensive board. But like you were talking about Josh Hart, it's cool, and I don't want to sound cheesy, but Josh Hart have a lot of had a lot of heart. You know what I mean? So
Exactly. It's not cheesy. That's what it is. That's what it is.
yeah.
Also, should be noted that with this game, Jalen Brunson has now passed Carmelo Anthony for most playoff points as a Knick.
Wow, that's I know Carmelo
591
Anthony.
points, Jalen Brunson, and 589, Carmelo Anthony.
Well, I think that's cool. Carmelo Anthony, I remember when he got traded to the Knicks. That wasn't as good as when he was on the Nuggets, but he was still good. He was still
Yeah, I
good.
mean,
I,
I wouldn't say that. I mean, he did have a top three MVP season
that's
at one point with the Knicks.
that's true. Yeah, no, that's true. That's legitimate. And
So like
I
he
thought
was
like
still good, but obviously like the playoff success with Carmelo Anthony is what's lacking in his career, both as a Knick, as a Denver Nugget, and as an Oklahoma City Thunder, as a Houston Rocket, as a
yeah,
Portland Trailblazer, as a Laker, all the teams that he's been on. But
exactly. That was actually I was gonna ask you that if he has a ring or not.
yeah, no, he does. Unfortunately for him, he joined the Lakers a little bit too late, and he does not have a championship ring. But he's got gold medals.
True.
Like
Yeah,
there's like
that's
you wanna argue that Melo can't win. I mean, he's got gold medals to prove it. Like he's got gold medals to prove that he can win. So, and on top of that, he was also a top scorer for like Team USA like while they were winning. So it's not like he was like on the sidelines of an
yeah,
unstoppable team. He
exactly.
was an important factor without a doubt.
Oh, definitely. During the Olympics and stuff like that. I kind of like watching the Olympics. You see all these guys kind of get like kind of like an all-star team kind of get together
Right? That's
and
exactly
usually,
what it is. And like you see how well they like mesh with each other. It's like
oh my God, yes.
literally a
Yeah.
dream team. It's like you have these dream scenarios. Imagine if LeBron played with Curry. Like now we actually get to see that. Like before, we were only able to see that in all-star games because
Yes.
by the time LeBron was done in like by when LeBron was in his career with Team USA, he was still on Miami. And then afterwards, he was focused more on like NBA basketball as opposed to Olympic basketball, allowing like other players to fill in that rotation and things of that nature. There's a comment. So our own podcast network has a question. Who would you take, Carmelo Anthony or Brunson?
Oh, what generation of basketball are we in?
That is a very, very good question. Brunson or Carmelo Anthony? It's like
he was bigger and he was a little thicker. He was, physicality, he probably Carmelo Anthony, but in terms of
actual production and offensive production, efficiency, things of that nature, it's got to be Brunson. Like it's hurting my heart, but I'm gonna remove bias aside. I love Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony is one of my favorite players. I love his game, but it's one game to win it all. Yeah, Brunson, like hands down,
absolutely,
hands down. Hands down, Brunson, without a doubt. Like I was removing my bias for Carmelo Anthony. I will admit there is a chance that he wouldn't be this famous if his name wasn't so cool. Like, change his name to something generic and tell me what his career and tell me like that's a Hall of Fame Nick. Change his name to something brand and look at what he did for everything else. Like, it's just all-star selections at that point. So it's like he wouldn't be such a fan favorite if it wasn't for his really cool name. Part of that. Now, the other part that I think is a little bit, because Melo, like, I love Melo. He's a great player, but he is one of the more overrated players in the NBA, like in NBA history. He's known as a scorer, but he's not really an efficient scorer. And his game is like, obviously, like, I think his game is beautiful because he only has to do like one or two things and he can score. Like, that's just absolutely beautiful, but it's also a little bit dull. And at times it's like the shot selection, it's really bad, which is a result of the bad field goal percentage. But like, that's all of this is sort of just adds on to that. And it's like, he's a scorer, yes, but he's not really that efficient of a scorer. And it's not like he was leading. He only led the league in points, I believe, once in his entire career. And obviously, like, I mean, it's really difficult to be in the same draft class, same position as LeBron James, because you see LeBron able to evolve his game as the years go on to be more than just a scorer, be a passer, be a rebounder, be a defender. But meanwhile, we see Carmelo Anthony just being the exact same Melo throughout the entirety of his career, just a scorer. And all of that takes a toll on like his career and the reputation that he has on the league. That makes sense.
That's legitimate, definitely. Like, I love watching Carmelo Anthony, his fadeaway, his step back. He was a great player. He was very dominant. He assumed that MVP role, so that could kind of be like a foreshadow of why he took too many bad shots. Maybe he felt like the team was on his back, so he's like, maybe I have to do it. Like, you know what I mean?
Kenneth in the chat says that Knicks might need Melo and Stoudemire with all these injuries.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's the injuries, like, they are really, really bad. Like, they are nothing to joke about whatsoever. These are really, really serious injuries for this. And hopefully, like, they're going into Indiana for the next two games. So hopefully we'll see Brunson going back to being Brunson yet again. And that injury was just like, it was nothing too big and nothing that deep. Hopefully.
Right.
But just to go over the box scores of this game, like, just, to highlight the key players so everyone can know. Halliburton, 34, 9, and 6. Siakam, 19, 9, and 2. And let's just keep going. Obi Toppin, I told you Obi Toppin was going to have a game. Coming off the bench, 20 points in 20 minutes, and was 7 of 10 from the field. And now for the Knicks side, Dante DiVincenzo, who hit another clutch three-pointer in the same spot, by the way. Let's go. We love to see it. 28 points with he played 44 minutes, by the way. 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Josh Hart, 19 points and 15 rebounds, 7 assists with absolutely 0 minutes sitting on the bench.
Wow,
And
that's impressive.
yeah, no, he never goes on the bench, ever. He's always in the game. And Brunson, 29 points. Obviously, he sat out an entire quarter. So he had 29 points in the 3 quarters. And, Mr. Tate, he has a question. Can the injuries cost the Knicks the series? I don't want to say anything on that. I don't want to say anything because I might speak it to existence. I don't want to say it.
Oh no, yeah, no.
I really don't. But if
it plays a role, it's gonna play a role. But I think the New York Knicks are a well-rounded team. Like you said, their defense is immaculate. And I think the Pacers, I know this is their second. Did they make the playoffs last year? I think they did, right?
The Pacers?
Yeah, I believe they did. But they're still kind of young. And I know the New York Knicks are young, but I think ultimately you kind of have Josh Hart on the court, and he's probably going to hold down the fort probably until Obi and Brunson get to 100%. These are young guys. They're hungry for a title. They're not going to let a small little injury keep them out.
Right, exactly. And back to OG. OG had 28 points in 28 minutes as well. So he was definitely playing out of his mind in this game, without a doubt. And there's really nothing that needs to be said about most of the series, because it's also, just to answer your question before, the Pacers, they weren't in the playoffs last year. Just to answer your question, it was Brooklyn that took that spot.
Oh wait, I'm thinking of the in-season tournament. They were
yes. That is what you were thinking. That is what you were thinking about.
Right.
The in-season tournament where they were a lot better than what we see now, is with at least with Halliburton's case, because Halliburton was going off with the in-season tournament. So, but. With that, we are out of time for the first 2 segments, and therefore we are out of time for Eric. Now, it's unfortunate. I had a great conversation with you, Eric. Definitely great talking about the Spurs, the fundamentals, the grit and grind of the old days. I never get to talk about that.
Yeah.
I never get to talk about
honestly,
that because of how young I am and things like that. So always works out. And be sure to tune into his podcast. It starts at what time exactly?
8
Because we
p.m.
are at a different time zone.
8 p.m. Pacific.
Say that again?
8 p.m. Pacific time.
8 p.m. Pacific. So that's around 11-ish, I believe, for Eastern time zone. So all of you guys can go ahead and tune into his shows, and he does a really good job. So yeah, basically that's all we got for you guys. And see you, Eric.
Thank you guys so much. Loved being on the show. Thank you, Nelson. It was an honor, sir.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too, my man.
Such a nice guy. All of these guys that I recommend all of you guys to watch all of the podcasts on the network, because they're all really nice people. They're definitely some of the best guys that I've had to work with in a while. So with that, we're going to go into the third segment where I give a playoff preview of the teams that are going to be matching up tonight, and exactly what I think is going to be the outcome of these games. So I will be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And here we are here I am, just me, myself, and I. And we are going to be, I keep saying we, but I always say we when I'm on these podcast shows, I guess. So we're going to be looking at the Mavericks and the Thunder game, as well as the Cavs and the Celtics game, which is going to be happening tonight. In the Celtics, they start at 7, and the Mavericks game, they start at 9:30 on ESPN. So we'll go over the Celtics first, because I feel like that's going to be a lot of an easier game to sort of review and preview. The Celtics, they blew out the Cavs in the previous matchup, and I think that the game is going to be just a little bit closer than it was last time. Just a little bit closer than it was last time, because I can't even lie to you guys. The Celtics team is just way too good. They are way too good for their own good, and I genuinely do not see the Cavs coming out of this series whatsoever, let alone winning a game. I don't see that happening. Miami, they won a game because they literally had to have a historic performance in order to beat them. Now, will that happen with the Cavs? Maybe. I mean, Donovan Mitchell is a very competent scorer, but I just think that the Celtics team is too loaded offensively and defensively to allow Cleveland to even have a chance of competing in this game. And just looking at the box scores from the previous game, Donovan Mitchell, he ended the game with 33 points. But the problem was that he was basically the only player that was scoring efficiently for that team. Aside from Evan Mobley, aside from Evan Mobley, nobody else had that good of production coming from the Cavs, either coming off the bench or in the starting rotation. There was nobody that was that stood out or helped the team in any way, shape, or form. And with the Celtics, on the other hand, Tatum, he had 18 points. And with those 18 points and 11 rebounds, the best player on his team, you would think that the game would be a lot closer than what it actually is, and you'd think that the team would have probably lost, because when you look at star of the team versus star of the team, Donovan Mitchell completely outplayed Jason Tatum. But it is a team sport, so the Celtics ended up winning by double digits they almost won by 25 points. So with this in mind, the fact that the Celtics, they have all of these other players coming off of just helping Tatum to win this series and helping their team to win. And Jaylen Brown, 32 points. Derek White, 25 points. Drew Holiday, 14 points. Al Horford, 7. And Peyton Picard, 16 points as well. All of these players for the Celtics, they're incredibly valuable. And as a team, they're just unstoppable. They're just that much better than every other team in the Eastern Conference. And I don't really think any other team in the Eastern Conference can beat the Boston Celtics. So the Celtics are probably going to be finals bound, assuming that the Knicks don't just pull off the miracle of the century and beat them in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I know what you guys are thinking, but wait a minute, I thought you said that the Knicks had the best chance of beating the Boston Celtics. I said that they had the best chance, but that doesn't mean that I think that they'll beat them. That there's a difference there. That, as well as these injuries for the Knicks. We have to see how severe they are. I don't know how bad OG's injury is yet. We don't know how Jalen Brunson, what could happen to Jalen Brunson in the next game. And if that re-aggravates an injury, we don't know. All of these X factors are really starting to play. And of course, it happens to the Knicks. Of course, all these X factors have to happen to the Knicks. Just shows their luck. It's unbelievable. But regardless, that's one game down. And now let's go ahead and go over the second game, which is the Thunder going up against the Dallas Mavericks. So in the last game, again, it was another blowout win, this time for the Thunder, 117-95. The Thunder have yet to lose a playoff game the Thunder have yet to lose a playoff game with this team. And they've played in 5 of them already, so we'll see if that streak is going to continue going into the postseason. Now, the Thunder as a team, they were the youngest team to win 55-plus games, the youngest team to earn the 1 seed, the youngest team to win a playoff series, and the youngest team to sweep a playoff series. So, obviously, this OKC team is a lot better than what I had previously thought they were. Like, I thought they were somewhat... I thought they were sort of just a regular season team, if that makes sense. Like, because the lack of experience in the postseason, I thought was going to inflict them a lot more harm than good in retrospect. But now, seeing as like how they've been playing, this is still sort of their real test, because the Pelicans, they were also short on a player in Zion Williamson, and that definitely affected the outcome of the series. But this is like literally like their legitimate playoff series where they're not playing against an injured team. Because now I'm not trying to, and in no way am I trying to take away the win from OKC by saying that by putting an asterisk on it because Zion Williamson was injured. But I do say that Zion being a non-factor is something that should be considered, because you almost always count on him being a factor. And the fact that they didn't have to worry about him being a factor just only speaks on how different the matchup was for them and the game plan was for them. So the Thunder, they ended their the final score was 117-95. Excuse me, I was having difficulty trying to formulate the words. And Luka and Kyrie, they played very poorly in this game. That being said, I don't know how exactly the Thunder would respond if Luka or Kyrie would have had one of their signature great performances. Because as of what I know right now, and as of what I've seen, like, it sort of seems like this Thunder team may or may not have gotten a little bit lucky in playing Dallas like this, in the sense that Luka and Kyrie not performing that well, or as well as they were against the Clippers. And because of the fact that they weren't playing so well, they did not have to really worry about much. Now, obviously, like, I can't really say that that's a fault on them. It's more of a fault on the Thunder. It's more so a fault on the Mavericks for not playing too well. But but the way that the media works and the way that these fans work, I'm not entirely, and these asterisks that they give, I'm not entirely sure how they're going to take this win if Luka and Kyrie shot very, very poorly. And it's really it's almost like a little bit lucky in a sense as to how they were able to they were able to match up against the Pelicans of all teams, and then they were able to match up against the Mavericks. When now in this matchup, the Mavericks aren't playing as well as they did in the previous matchup. I mean, obviously I have no idea how the series is going to end. I really don't, because if Luka continues to play like this, then it might be over in 4. But I don't know how this Thunder team might respond if Luka goes off. What if Luka goes off and Kyrie also goes off? How are they going to respond are they going to be able to hold that defensively, or are they going to need to rely on Shai Gilgeous again and again to do this, to handle the scoring? And chances are that's probably what it'll come down to. And the fact that Shai had 29, 9, and 9 in the final game, or in the first game of the series, it makes sense that this is sort of the approach that OKC is going to go about with this series. So I think that the Thunder, they're probably going to win in the second game, and the only chance that the Mavericks really have is if Luka drops like a 40-point triple-double and Kyrie scores 30+. That is like what I'm seeing, and that's when they'll come out with the win. Now, if they don't do that, then I do see the Thunder winning this, and then the series eventually going over to Dallas and, play over there. So obviously, like, these two games, I mean, the Cavs series has sort of, in my opinion, it's already been decided. And the Thunder series and the Mavs still yet to be decided as of right now. And we're also expecting we're expecting the Nuggets to play their third game of the playoffs against the Timberwolves over in Minnesota. So I think I might save that for a later segment tomorrow. But I feel like both teams are going to go up 2-0 in this series by the time the day is over. And honestly, now that I've spoken into existence, I wouldn't be surprised that one of those teams that I mentioned just ends up dropping a game. And if they end up dropping a game, I will be really, really disappointed in my projection skills, because there's no way that it's like every single time I say something, the complete opposite of that would happen. And excuse me. It's funny when it does happen, but I don't like being wrong. But regardless, if you are going to tune into these games, some key players to pay attention for on both teams, for the Cavs, pay attention to Darius Garland, because I have a feeling that Darius Garland is going to need to be an X factor for this Cavs team if they want a chance to even win a game. Darius Garland is going to need to play a very good series. He hasn't really been playing as well as I'm used to seeing him, because I thought he was going to be a really good point guard in the Eastern Conference, and at least in the conversations of it, but so far he has not this season. And it might be because he was injured for a little bit, but regardless, I genuinely do not think that. But Garland is going to be that X factor. And obviously watch Donovan Mitchell. Then for the Celtics, you want to watch all of those players, honestly, because all of those players can be an X factor. So specifically Tatum, Brown, and Derek White. Really, Derek White is the most ultimate X factor you could possibly have because of his defense and the ability to score constantly down the floor. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they also have defense, not discrediting them or their defensive capabilities or offensive, honestly. But Derek White was primarily a defender before he was this good at scoring offensively. So those are the players that you need to watch out for that game. In this game, as I mentioned previously, you need to watch out for Luka and Kyrie Irving, because those guys are the ones that are going to be going off. Now, for the Thunder, obviously looking at Shai, but you might also want to look at Chet Holmgren or Jalen Williams on the roster, because those guys could also be X factors to sort of help Shai overcome this next series as well, just in case he's not really performing that well in this postseason. But we'll see how it turns out. And with that, we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, continuing the Austin Rivers talk about can NFL players play in the NBA and can NBA play in the NFL, because quite recently an NFL player just became the first NFL player to sign a professional contract with basketball. So I'll tell you who that is in the fourth segment right after this short break. Actually, might not be that short of a break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows. Available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we're going to talk about the first ever NFL player former NFL player to sign a professional basketball contract. Now, this comment coming in from Austin Rivers about saying that you can put 30 NBA players on an NFL roster, but you can't put 30 NFL players on an NBA roster, it sparked a lot of buzz coming in from football stars and a lot of football fans and a lot of NBA fans as well. So it's very, very controversial because really, like, these are athletes that are playing completely different sports, and like, on top of that, like, the fact that it's just a completely different sport, it's really just, it's rude and it's, like, insulting to, excuse me. It's insulting to say that NBA athletes can play in a completely different professional league in a completely different sport. Like, it's unbelievably disrespectful. And everything was coming out. Like, we even got video clips from, like, NFL players that are playing basketball, and they're not that bad. Like, there's a lot of these NFL players that are buckets. Like, they can get a bucket. However, it's really like their height and the size that's the difference, and the reason why these NFL athletes can't compete in the NBA. Simply because of the height difference. Because, like, they might be fundamentally skilled. However, when you take into account, like, let's say, for example, there was a clip of Tyreek Hill. He was absolutely balling. Like, he knew how to hoop. But we all know Tyreek Hill, he's relatively short. And Steph Curry would tower over Tyreek Hill. And because of that, it's like you really cannot have these NFL players be on an NBA roster because of how tall they are, the rest of the NBA players. And that sort of gives the NBA players an advantage. It might not give them an advantage at football, but it does give them an advantage in basketball and in every other facet. Now, on to the first NFL player. So, Devin Funchess, he used to play for the Panthers and for 4 years of his career, and was also on the Colts in his last year of his career. And first player from the NFL to sign a professional basketball contract. So he wasn't really, like, as a player, he wasn't really anything that I would say special, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want to disrespect him, but he's one of those, like, how do I put this? He's one of those receivers that was not talked about as much, and he was on the same team that I believe Cam Newton was on when they made it all the way to the Super Bowl, and he was one of the receivers for them, and that was his first year. And afterwards, the Panthers, they weren't the same afterwards since, like, Cam Newton's MVP season. And the numbers that he was averaging throughout the NFL, they were all right. Like, they weren't anything too special, but they were all right. So just a little bit of football knowledge, like just a little bit of knowledge of just exactly who this player was in the NFL. And he signed a contract to play in the Columbia Basketball League, and there's not much details yet because, the contract was, like, literally just made. So I'm just going to go ahead and look at the contract details of this player real quick, because that's honestly an incredibly, like, historical thing, given the fact, like, being versatile in both sports, or, well, versatile, ambidextrous, whatever you want to call it, in both sports is amazing. Like, and let me see. I wonder if he's played a game there yet. Like, if the games have started. But let me go ahead and see real quick, because there's only news outlets that are out, not really his contract deals. So let me go ahead and see if I can find his contract details, because I was looking everywhere for the contract details of his his contract with the team, but so far, like, there's not much information that's coming out. But he is going to be playing for the Caribbean Storm Llaneros. I believe that's what they're called. And I believe that's how you pronounce it as well. I am Dominican. I do speak Spanish, so that is most definitely how you would pronounce it. Now, yeah, there's no real argument on there's no real, like, the discussion on his contract at all. But he is playing in basketball right now. Like, he's actively playing. So he is actively playing in these professional games. Like, that is amazing. The fact that he's, like, playing against, like, grown men in these big games. And did he end up scoring? Yes, he did. He scored a point in this clip that I'm watching right now. He seems solid. Like, yeah, he seems like he knows what he's doing in this in all of these clips that I'm watching right now. He's great rebound, especially for someone that short. But that's honestly, like, I mean, that's probably why he was able to get into the league, because a lot of these players, they're looking rather short compared to the average NBA player. And I mean, looking at Victor Wembanyama, maybe I'm sort of, like, blind to what short is now, but I'm just looking at his bio real quick. Oh, yeah, his height is 6'4". So it would seem that through the clip he was playing like a center, but he's 6'4", and would only be a point guard in the NBA, just based off of these clips that I'm watching. Like, in the NBA, he would be a point guard, but that doesn't really look like he's a point guard in these clips that I've seen. But granted, like, congratulations for him. That's definitely something to be proud of, because being a pro in both the NFL and then being a pro in a basketball league is outstanding, in my opinion. Like, there's really nothing that could even, like, there's very few athletes that were able to be good at both sports. Like Bo Jackson, he's a prime example of one of those players like that. And trying to think off the top of my head any other player that is ambidextrous in multiple sports. Like, there aren't that many people, and really, like, it's when you're able to do it at such a high level, it's just, you deserve all that respect. And it doesn't matter whether he's in the NBA or whether he's not in the NBA. That deserves my respect. Now, obviously, that's not the NBA. That's obviously not the NBA. So it's, the point still halfway stands. Like, halfway that point stands. And it's really just like, you know, it's not even close to that. Kenneth in the chat, Deion Sanders, all-time Yankee. We're not going to talk about that, okay? We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to, this is basketball right here. So, like, this is why I host basketball podcasts, right? We're not going to talk about that. But regardless, let's see. That's basically all I have for this show segment, and that's basically the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. Really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Before I end off the segment, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, it's displayed below the ticker as well as in the link in the description. And that's basically all I have for you guys today in this fourth segment. I hope you guys really enjoyed bringing Eric onto the show this time, and hopefully you enjoyed his takes. Hopefully you liked him, and hopefully you guys will go ahead and check out his wrestling podcast, and hopefully you guys also go ahead and check out Kenneth's football podcast that starts, I believe, a little bit earlier than mine. I'm not entirely sure exactly what time. I think 10:30, I believe, his is when the show starts. Is that right, Kenneth? Let me know if I'm wrong on that, or if I'm right. But usually I'm in class when Kenneth is doing his podcast, which is why I don't know exactly what time he starts. But normally, like, if I could, I would try to, like, peer in. But it's just, like, given how the week has gone, a lot of busy stuff has been going on. But yes, turns out I am right. That is, it starts at 10:30. So be sure to tune into his football podcast as well. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit and the coffee ain't hit.